Hello and welcome to my review and impressions of the Elden Ring closed network test. All of the gameplay you'll see in this video was captured on a PS5, but I believe the test ran on all current gen and last gen consoles, except of course the Nintendo Switch. This network test was actually missing from PC as well, and if I had to guess, I would say that was probably due to the fear of data mining and things like that, although I don't really know for sure. And hey, if you enjoy this video or find it useful, please do consider subscribing to the channel for more content like this. So, for those of you that don't know, this was a closed network test for the game. The only way you could get into this test was to apply for a code on the Bandai Namco website, and then pray to a deity of your choice in the hopes that you'd get in. I actually know two other people who did apply and did not get in, but, you know, by some stroke of luck, I did, and I can't lie to you, it was pretty damn cool. Mind you, having said that, I think I've probably used up about 10 years worth of good luck getting into this thing, so I guess we'll just have to see how that goes. But yeah, you get your code, you download the beta, and then we were given a schedule of when we could actually play the game. There was a total of, I think, 15 hours available in 5 3-hour sessions. I was only able to play in 3 of the 5 sessions because 2 of them were actually at 3 AM to 6 AM, and there's not a chance that I could have done that. I've mentioned before on this channel, but I have a lot of injuries and conditions to manage that revolve around chronic pain, and I take pretty strong sleeping tablets and pain relief every day, so these 2 sessions were basically lost causes for me. However, I did play the full 9 hours that I was able to do, and I recorded pretty much all of it. And after doing my research, I'm pretty sure I did everything that I could do in the test and killed every single boss, did everything in the world, literally everything I could find. And I guess there could perhaps be some single item or a few spells that I didn't find, or perhaps there were some I found but didn't use, but in general, I pretty much did everything. So I think what I'll do is show you as much as I can in this one video, and then perhaps I'll make a second video, and if you'd like to see that, please do let me know. And by the way, there will of course be some spoiler stuff here, although some things that you see in this video may change by the time the full game comes out. Having said that, if you don't want spoilers, why did you click on the video? What are you doing? I'm only joking of course, but you'd be surprised how many people do that kind of thing. So I guess first off, what kind of game is Elden Ring? Well, it's basically a Dark Souls game, and if you've ever played Demon Souls, Dark Souls 1, 2 and 3, Bloodborne, you know, all those kind of things, it'll feel instantly familiar to you. It takes what are arguably the best elements from the other From Software games and merges them into its own thing, but in the setting of a large open world. The open world that we got to explore in the test is pretty large indeed, but from what I understand, it's only around 1/3 or perhaps 1/4 of the entire starting world from the full release. Something that a lot of people seem to be, I don't know, forgetting or perhaps simply don't know about, is that the world you saw in the official gameplay demo that was released a little while back was just the first open world. According to what I've read, there will actually be multiple large open world maps. Once you get to Stormvale Castle and you finally beat the main boss of this particular map, which is Godfric, you know, the guy with all the arms grafted onto him, you'll gain access to a new, fully open world map, probably with a different theme and a new main boss. I actually thought we could fight Godric in this network test, but apparently you can't. You just kind of get to a certain point in his legacy dungeon, and it just blocks you from proceeding any further. And while we're on that subject, a legacy dungeon is essentially a standard Souls-style level, which has been inserted into the open world. It has all the things you've come to expect from a Dark Souls gauntlet, and has you fighting through enemies, avoiding traps, grabbing treasure, and then at the end of it, you fight the main boss. The game also features smaller and somewhat easier dungeons out in the open world that offer optional boss fights, crafting materials, strong loot, and of course runes, which are this game's soul currency. Now then, I'm not going to go into the nitty-gritty of exactly how everything works, because frankly the bulk of the stuff that you do in the game is very similar to the standard Souls games. Quite a few animations and even whole enemies are reused from other Souls games, and I'm personally okay with that, but I mean, I can see some people saying, well, you wouldn't give it a pass in another game, so why would you give it a pass in Elden Ring? Just because it's a Souls game? And, you know, honestly, that's a very good point. And you know what, perhaps I shouldn't give it a pass? I think I'll reserve judgment until the full game releases next year, but what I will say is that From Software do have an incredible record and portfolio when it comes to putting out quality games. So that's where my personal bias comes in, I suppose. I'm happy to give them the benefit of the doubt due to their past work. It's as simple as that really, but if the full game has some stuff I don't like in it, I will of course say so. Having said all that, it's not exactly a carbon copy of Dark Souls. There's actually quite a lot of new features that have been added to the formula. For me, the game feels instantly familiar and my muscle memory did kick in within minutes, but at the same time it feels fresh and exciting, which I have to point out is probably because of the move to the open world, the new lore, the story, all the mystery behind everything, and of course because I got to play the game early in this test. But as I said, there is a lot of new stuff like the open world itself. It adds a ton of freedom, and I was really worried in the beginning that it might ruin the focus of the Souls formula. The other Souls games are like tightly controlled and constructed gauntlets, but then you move that into an open world setting and I don't know, I felt like it might feel a little bit aimless and like you were just wandering around with no real goal or intent. I didn't want to admit this, but that is actually how I felt in the beginning. For maybe the first hour or so, my initial gut feeling and first impression was that the open world didn't really add anything to the game and actually conversely took away from the experience. However, having said that, during my second gameplay session, which was probably I think around 4 to 5 hours of total game time, it suddenly clicked with me and I just kind of got it, you know? I really started to understand the open world design, and the more I played, the more I came to enjoy it. And you guys know I'm happy to be proven wrong and I don't mind learning new things or having my opinions changed. And so I think I went into this test looking for why it had moved to a open world setting instead of what I should have been doing, which was simply playing by the new rules and accepting the change. And not dwelling on the change, just playing the game. And after I did that, I really started to enjoy pretty much everything about the new design. I simply had a lot of fun just discovering the mini dungeons and then fighting through them to get to the boss and then looting the prize at the end. I mean, I suppose once you clear a place like that, there doesn't really seem to be any reason to go back there. It seems like a bit of a shame as well, because these caves and tombs and catacombs are really awesome to explore, but they can finish very quickly. I'm talking maybe 5 to 10 minutes maximum, especially if you're, leveled up and your character has upgraded weapons. It's usually just a few rooms, a few enemies, and maybe a couple of traps, and then a boss, which is fine. But again, once you clear them and kill the boss, that's kind of it. The bosses all seem to be unique in these areas too, designed specifically for these small dungeons with their own lore and movesets. And that seems like a lot of effort to put in for not very much. Don't get me wrong, I really do appreciate the work that goes into this stuff, and they are great the first time you go through them, but they're just over so quickly. Perhaps it's just that these dungeons were in the starter area. I mean, maybe in later areas these mini dungeons will be bigger and perhaps more elaborate. I can't really say for sure, but I do hope that is the case. Another thing I thought that was pretty cool is the mount that you're given early on by Melina. I think you meet Melina after resting at 3 sites of grace, and then she gives you the mount and the ability to level up. The mount's official name is Torrent, and he's a spectral steed that you can summon using an item from your item bar. You can fight on horseback, which is pretty fun, and of course you can get around the world faster, and he has a cool double jump that allows you to get to areas you wouldn't normally be able to reach on foot. It's something that this game absolutely needed, and I think the way it's been implemented is just typical From Software. That is to say, I think it's been done in both a practical but interesting way. I'm looking forward to messing around with the exploration in the full game, but I do wonder if you can get different mounts, even if they're just skins or something like that, but they do the same thing. No idea right now, but again, that would be pretty cool. Now let's talk about the game's map. And of course, me being me, I didn't actually find the map fragment item that you need to unlock the fully detailed map until about 6 hours into my 9-hour playtime. Because, I'm clearly an idiot, but yeah, I found the map fragment in an area that I'd already visited about, I think, 3 times previously. And before you get the map fragment, the map just looks like this. It does show you places you've found and it does let you fast travel to them. But once you find the actual fragment, it looks like this, which gives you a much more detailed look at everything. It doesn't give you an exact 3D view or show you where items are or anything like that, but you can make out points of interest, so it does kind of help with exploration. It's a pretty simple but effective system, and by all accounts, the full game is going to be rather large indeed, so a good map system will be a valuable asset. I also found the equipment like armor, talismans, weapons, and all that stuff to be pretty standard fare in terms of From Software games. They all performed and worked the way I would expect, which was fine, but I did really like some of the armor designs. Firstly, I really liked the starting armor for the Enchanted Knight, which is what I started the test with. Later on though, I found this heavy warrior set that I switched to as soon as I got it, and I never took it off after that. I actually found it in the carriage that was being pulled by those 2 giants. We've seen it in the trailers and all sorts of different things at this point, but I would assume that items will be moved around for the full game, but it was still a pretty awesome thing to discover. One thing I did notice is that the weapon arts from Dark Souls 3, which are now called skills in this game, were very usable and quite potent. The issue for me is that during a fight, I generally don't like to use magic or buffs or special items. I don't really like to complicate a fight. I suppose you could call it a rather standard or even a boring playstyle, but I personally like to go for, a sword and shield, medium armor, and a bow for long distance. Honestly, I rarely use items or anything other than what I just mentioned, but of course, that is just me. I think all of the new skills and the impressive looking magic is great, and I am tempted to mix a little bit of it into my character when the full game releases, but I probably won't use that much of it. It's just not really my thing. I will say though, I really do like the guard counter move. When you guard your enemy's attack, you can press the strong attack button, which was R2 for me, and you can do this quick and rather powerful counter attack. Players have kind of been doing this for years anyway in Souls games, but now it actually has a proper animation and has been promoted to a proper in-game mechanic. It used to just be that when an enemy bounced off your shield, it left them open to a standard attack, and that was kind of it. I do remember there being some kind of damage bonus for hitting them while they were off balance, but as I say, now it's properly been implemented and it very quickly became a staple of my playthrough. Another new feature is crafting. As you explore the open world, you'll find plants and wildlife that you can harvest for crafting materials. You can get things like eggs and feathers from birds, neck meat from giant turtles, and things like berries and flowers from plants. You can then craft using a ton of items, and you can do it all from your in-game menus no matter where you are in the world, which is a nice touch. They could have easily just restricted this to sites of grace, but they didn't. You can do it literally anywhere. While it's a good idea and it works perfectly fine, it's probably another thing that I won't use that much. As I said, I don't really like to complicate my fights with loads of consumable items. I can see myself perhaps crafting arrows, in fact definitely crafting arrows, but who knows, maybe there'll be other items in the full game that I'll want to craft. I guess we'll just have to wait and see. Actually, there's something I've only just remembered as I'm recording this, the Physick potion system. As a reward for an early mini dungeon, you get this bottle that you can use to mix your own potion. To do that, you go to a site of grace which people will probably forever call a bonfire, and a new option will appear in the menu. To mix the potion from this menu, you can equip 2 crystal tier items that you find out in the world to the bottle, and when you do that, the drink inside will take on those effects. So I had 1 crystal that increases your maximum stamina for a little while, and also another one that recovers your FP, which is the blue bar that you use for magic. But if you don't use magic at all, you could swap out the crystal tier that adds that effect for another one that benefits you more. What's cool is that it works a bit like a health flask or an Estus flask, meaning you don't just mix one and it's gone forever. You mix one and then it acts like an Estus flask. You literally put it in your item bar and it refills when you rest, die, or fast travel. I don't know if you can upgrade it to get more charges out of it in the full game, but it's a minor although interesting addition. I do quite like it. Next, I just wanted to touch on the bosses in the game. I was going to show you a ton of boss fights and go through them all, but this video is already getting a bit long, so I thought I'd just give you a bit of an overview in this video and then maybe make a separate video talking about all the bosses I fought and showing you the fights. If that's something that you'd like to see or you'd find that interesting, please do let me know and I'll see what I can do. So the bosses in the network test were honestly really interesting. Of course, we really don't know too much about their lore or the significance to the overall narrative, but they still look great and the fights themselves are pretty fun. I didn't really feel like any of them were too difficult, but some were very easy indeed. That probably doesn't mean too much though, as these network tests are often made a little bit easier so that people can get through them in a timely manner. I was also level 30 and had a +3 longsword when I did some of these, so I imagine that probably helped as well. I didn't actually find some of the bosses initially because they were quite well hidden. There's this stone digger troll that I found in the mines and it's quite hard to find. There's a couple of elevators in those mines and you had to jump off onto a random ledge to actually find this guy. I mean, for veteran Soul players, you know what to look out for, but there's plenty of people who didn't even find this boss. But yeah, pretty cool thing to stumble upon. There was also a few mini bosses like this lion thing with a large blade attached to one of its legs that was just kinda hanging out in Stormvale Castle. I managed to beat it on the second try, so it wasn't actually that bad. And I only found it because I went in the front door after, going around the side. At Stormvale Castle, you get the option to either go in the front door or try to go around the side, but I went around the side initially and then decided, well, what if I go back and look through the front door as well? And there was this lion thing. So again, you could have probably completely missed it and never known, which again is a cool feature because you just never know what you're going to find and where, which, really does make you want to explore. And this next one I wasn't actually going to show because it was such a surprise. I didn't want to spoil it for anyone in case this is in the main game, but then I've sort of thought, if you've clicked on this video, you probably don't mind, so here it is. I have no idea what to call this thing, but I found a door which I opened, and then at the back of the room I could see an item on a corpse. The room, however, was pitch black and I couldn't see anything except the item, and I remember thinking, well, that looks inviting, I'm sure nothing in there is going to try and kill me. So I walked in, the door slammed behind me, and then this thing attacked me in the dark, so I wasn't really prepared for this fight, and it did kill me the first time, but I went back and got it on the second try, and that's the thing, sometimes knowing what's around the corner is the difference between life and death in these games, and that's always been an interesting concept to me. Of course, stats and weapons really help, but knowledge is really helpful in these games. And lastly, I want to talk a little bit about the final boss of the test. I heard a lot of people had trouble with this guy, and I'm not ashamed to admit that he took me a good maybe 4 or 5 tries to beat. The issue I had was trying to dodge everything. I did that a lot in this fight. Thing is, his combos are quite long, and by the time you've dodged everything, you don't really have a lot of stamina left to punish his attacks. So in the third or maybe the fourth attempt, about halfway through, I started just simply blocking everything and only dodging to help with my positioning. I did far better doing that, and yeah, I died again, but on the final try, I went in knowing that I needed to block, and I was able to beat him fairly easily after that. Plus, at that point, I knew what he was capable of. So again, knowledge is very valuable. I quite liked his design visually, nothing too special I don't think, but still cool nonetheless, and his fight was fun after I realized I should be blocking and not dodging. A few of his attacks felt a bit annoying and dare I say a little bit cheap, like they were made to catch you out on purpose and throw you off. And in that same train of thought, so many enemies, especially bosses, have strong AoE attacks now, which they will use constantly. At first, I wasn't really too happy with it because it felt like you had no space to punish the boss, because no matter where that boss's attack falls, it could hit you due to being an AoE. However, again, after spending 9 hours with the game, I get it. It's to balance out how much more powerful we are as players and how many more options we have at our disposal. The magic you have and the skills you can use would simply obliterate most of these enemies if they didn't have AoEs to protect themselves. And as I said earlier, it's about adapting to the new world's rules, in the same way that we all did when moving from Dark Souls to Bloodborne. And so, in conclusion, I was very lucky to be invited to this thing, and I'm genuinely sorry for those that couldn't play it. I am really looking forward to the full game, and I'll say right now that I doubt I'll get a review code for this one, but I'll be buying it and reviewing it as quickly as possible when it's finally in my hands. I did have some issues in the first few hours simply because I hadn't adapted to the new way of doing things, but at some point something just clicked and I found myself really enjoying everything that I played. Sure, there's some stuff like crafting that I probably won't use that much and the weapon skills as well, but these are optional, just like the mini dungeon bosses that give you some nice rewards for beating them. It's all just options for the player, and the sheer amount of these options is staggering and not to mention quite impressive. Overall, it was a brilliant experience which I am grateful to have been a part of. As I said earlier, I believe I did literally everything in this test, so if there's anything you want to know or something that you just want to ask me about, no matter how small, please let me know and I'll give you an answer as soon as humanly possible. And so there you go, that is my full review and impressions of the Elden Ring closed network test. The full game will be released on February 25th for all consoles except the Nintendo Switch, and you will be able to get it on PC as well. If you enjoyed the video or found it useful, I hope today will be the day that I earn your subscription, and if you want to support the channel even further, all the important links you need are in the video description down below. But with all that said, thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you next time.